Now it's working. I've done properly this time.
Right.
Previously, the microphone was only recording me, which I think was the good way of doing it. But no, now you can hear the dulcet tones of my co-host, cruising from men's bathrooms, Keith, over here.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. See,
Bonjour.
He's back from La France.
La Français. Yeah.
He was on his very cruelly went on his vacation.
I did.
Leaving me here alone.
I apologize.
Don't apologize to me. Apologize to the listeners.
What, to them they won't have even known.
Well, they will have felt it.
Okay.
They will have felt your absence. And they would have felt how sad I am.
Yeah.
Keith, tell
Yes.
us about your vacation. Did you go back to Pedophile Island? Oh, wait, no, you didn't want me to say you go on holidays to Jeffrey Epstein's Island. Sorry. I'll make sure to delete that when I'm editing.
Cut.
Yeah, cut. Where'd you go this time, Keith?
We went to a place in the south of France and it was fantastic. I had a great time. We were there for 10 days. I drank a bottle of wine each night.
Nice.
Which was fantastic.
Wow.
Um,
Man, your fucking toilet must have been manky if you're drinking a bottle of wine every night.
Well, I like to stodge up my stomach first. I like to embrace myself in the culture. So for
Okay.
two nights on the trot, what I did was I had a full tray of lasagna, which was
Classic French
Classic
cuisine.
French cuisine,
Lasagna. Yeah. Did you have lasagna and 2 packs of cigarettes?
lasagna, 2 packs of cigarettes, then I washed it down with a pint of Bulmers. So it was...
You were a disgusting man.
I know. But they didn't have any Guinness, so,
We did Bulmers. For folks that don't, Bulmers is Irish cider. I think it's called Magners outside of Ireland.
It is, yeah. It's only called Bulmers in Ireland. It's Magners outside. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And it tastes like just fizzy apple juice.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
It's what kids drink to get drunk.
Yeah, well, the thing was, like, you know yourself. When we go abroad, the first thing you look for is Guinness. And they
Yeah.
didn't have Guinness. All they had
Sacre
was...
bleu, to that
Sacre
one.
bleu, yes.
Yeah.
So the next best thing I had then, I guess, was Bulmers. So I went with
right.
Bulmers and trays of lasagna.
Wow, man, what a life you lead, Keith. What an interesting world you exist in. That's the question I have to say. Well, I'm here alone. I actually did something pretty interesting while you were away. I wrote a song
Okay.
for the podcast.
Right, okay.
Do you want to hear it?
I absolutely want to hear
Okay,
it.
I wrote this myself. I think it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I wrote this.
Okay. Oh. No, is that it? No. Buffy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, no, me. I wrote that. That's not the Buffy the Vampire Slayer
Okay.
theme song.
That's
And I
Mike
did not
Vampire
spend
Slayer.
the weekend watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's a great show.
It is a good show.
It is. It
I haven't
actually,
seen it since I was 17,
it
but I
holds
enjoyed
up-
it then. I'm sure I enjoy it now.
It holds up surprisingly. It's a fun show. You know, I mean, I've rewatched The X-Files a million and one times, so I needed another 90s horror TV show.
Right.
Buffy slid right in there. But you know, okay, I'll admit it. Finally, you caught me.
Okay.
I didn't write that song. But you know what I found out?
Go on.
So we can't use that as our theme song because it's like copyright.
Ah, shucks.
I know,
Yeah.
right? Brah, I shook
Yeah.
my fist. But you know what I found out is not copyright, and you can just steal it,
Go on.
is titles and names. Like movie titles.
Really?
You can't copyright a movie title. That's why there'll be a couple of movies that have the same title.
Okay.
Did you ever
yeah.
notice that? Like there'll be a movie from the 70s called
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
The Shadow, and then
Yeah.
there'll be another movie like 20 years later, completely different, but it's also called The Shadow.
That's happened a couple times where I go to watch something. I go, oh, amazing. It's on YouTube. And then I go and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's from like the 1970s.
It's some shitty movie
Yeah.
from the 50s.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking, and hear me out,
Okay.
right? We should rename the That Chapter podcast
Okay.
to The Lord of the Rings.
I love it.
Yeah. What do you think? We don't talk about The Lord of the Rings. We just call the podcast The Lord of the Rings.
Every now and again, we could kind of like, we'll start like mentioning a ring, just get people excited, and then just go off topic again.
And then just go back to horror and true crime.
Yeah,
Sounds great. So, as you can tell, while you were not here, I was going slightly insane. These are just some of the things I was
Have
thinking
you
about.
left the house?
No.
Okay.
What am I going to do outside?
It is very dark in here. You
I
should
know,
open- you
that's
should
the
open
way I like
curtains.
it. I like my spooky shit. Oh, okay, I will say this. So Buffy the Vampire Slayer wasn't the only thing I was watching. Sure the folks at home are eager to hear of Mike's movie reviews.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I've got a couple. So 2 movies I watched were both also 90s. I associate 90s and horror. So every time, and I love horror. So I watched Urban Legend, a 90s horror movie.
Okay, cool.
It's terrible.
Oh.
I mean, it's kind of terrible in a fun way.
Yeah.
So there's like a killer going around. It's set on a college campus.
Right. Okay.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with it, but like he commits murders, or they commit murders, because maybe it's a chick, in kind of like urban legendy ways.
Nice.
So like, you know, the babysitter answers the phone and the killer is
in
like,
the backseat of the car.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's literally the first kill is that
nice.
woman's driving and she pulls over to get gas, and then the guy who's like filling her tank is like, he's acting really weird, and he's like, oh, you have to come in with me.
Yeah.
And then she's like, no, you're freaky. He eventually convinces her to come into the gas station because he's like, oh, your credit card company needs to talk to you on the phone. She follows him into the gas station. She picks up the phone. The line is dead.
Ooh.
And he's like, you know, got you now. And he's like, you have to stay here. And she's like, she eventually breaks through the window, runs back to her car and drives off. And he's like, there's somebody in. He was trying to save her life because he's seen somebody in the backseat of her car. And then the killer, this is bananas. The killer then whips out an axe and puts it through her head as she's driving the car.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one of the kills. It's a shit movie.
I hope he had a seatbelt on. Safety first.
I mean, he's wielding an axe, so he probably didn't. You can't get much leverage with a seatbelt on wielding an axe.
He sounds like a madman.
Yeah. I also watched, I'd never seen it because there's a reboot of this movie coming out. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Also starring Sarah Michelle Gellar.
That's a good one, yeah.
It's not bad. It's not good. But it's not bad. It's very much like you can tell all these movies are just like copying Scream.
Yes.
And they're not. And Scream is like still one of the best horror movies of all time.
Yeah,
and these are not.
Yeah.
But it was better than Urban Legend. Okay, I will tell you this, right? One horror movie I watched was excellent. Final Destination Bloodlines.
Which one's that?
That's the newest Final Destination
newest
movie.
one, okay.
It just came out this year, so it's Final Destination. I think in that horror franchise, there's like, I think this is the 6th entry in a Final Destination franchise.
Oh, is this the one where it starts off and they're up in the big tower?
Yeah. It's kind of like, I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, but it's sort of like the Seattle build. It's like a tall tower with like a round UFO-shaped restaurant on top.
Glass floor type thing.
With a glass floor type thing. Yeah, so that's what it starts. So the basic plotline of Bloodlines is the start of it is set in the 60s, and she goes up into this restaurant tower place. She has a vision that they're all going to die, that the building's going to collapse. And so she's like, oh, you have to get out. Yeah. So she saves everybody.
Okay.
But because she saves like hundreds of people, death has to come after each and every one because, of course, they were supposed to die.
Yeah.
But because there were so many people, it takes death like decades. And by that time,
he's got a backlog.
I know, exactly. He's like, are you serious with the fucking
This
bullshit?
is a whole admin
I know.
mess.
He was like, that bitch. And so then, but the thing is, by the time death gets around to them, these people have had kids and grandkids who weren't supposed to exist because these people were supposed to have died and never had any kids.
So is this like the origin story?
No. It's not an origin story, but it's like how death kind of comes for then the grandchildren who technically shouldn't exist because your grandparents should have died, never giving birth to your parent, blah, blah, blah.
Got it.
It's great.
Yeah.
I think I've watched all the Final Destination movies. The first one is the plane crash one.
Yeah, that was a great one. Yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
The second one is the one on the road with the truck and the logs.
Is that the roller coaster one?
No, that's the third one.
That's third. Okay.
The second one is the roller coaster, or the logs. The truck is driving. There's a big truck. Everybody's
Sorry,
fear of like driving behind a truck with the logs and it comes through. That's that one. Third one is the roller coaster one. With probably the most infamous Final Destination death scene, the tanning salon.
Oh, that's a
Where
great
those
scene.
2 chicks. That's like honestly the most memorable death scene.
That's a good scene. Yeah.
The fourth one, I actually can't remember the fourth one. I think the fifth one is a bridge. I remember the fourth one being kind of shit. The fifth one being also kind of shit. The first 3 ones are good.
Yes.
4 and 5, not good. 6, the best one yet.
Okay.
I think it was actually the best Final Destination movie. I mean, they're really fun movies, but this was just bonkers.
Okay.
I highly recommend, folks, get out there, check out Final Destination Bloodlines. It's really, really fun. There's some great death scenes in it. One involving a garbage truck. One, probably one of the most memorable death scenes, actually. It might even have topped the tanning salon. Involves an MRI machine.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I see one on the ad with a lawnmower.
There's a lot. That one was pretty shocking. Okay. That one, that was really, really good. So yeah, highly recommend Final Destination Bloodlines for that.
Cool.
That's Mike's movie of the week. 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up.
Check it out wherever
His
you
highest
get
review
it.
yet.
Yeah. Well, it's up there. I thought this is a really fun movie.
Yeah.
Like it's not as good as Strange Darling or 80s or like Nosferatu or whatever, but it's really, really fun. It's like a movie I'd be excited to watch it again.
Well, you've talked me into it.
There you go, folks. Check it out. It's on Apple or Amazon or whatever the hell. And yeah, so that's Mike's movie reviews for this week.
Nice.
Okay. Stay tuned. Stay tuned, folks. All right, Keith.
All right.
Shall we get into today's tale? Is
Charlie Albright.
Charlie Albright. I see what you did there. Charlie Albright, the eyeball killer. What's his nickname again?
Yeah, the eyeball killer.
Is it just the eyeball killer? Oh, the eyeball killer. Oh, that's really. I thought that's kind of lame. Now that I think about it. I thought he had a better name.
Right.
He liked eyeballs a lot.
Maybe we could give him a better name. Something like Jaws 2. because you can't copyright tiles.
That's a good idea. We'll call them Jaws too. By the way, I know this is like the third or fourth story in a row we've done that's set in Texas. We just did Texarkana, the Servant Girl Annihilator.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what I wanted to do before that.
It's a hell of a city.
City? State?
State, yeah.
Yeah, it's a goddamn state. All right, yeah, fellas. Today it takes us to Dallas. We usually do our little geography tales, but it's Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. You know
it. You all know it. So, this one takes us to the mighty year of 1990.
Fine year.
Keith. This begins 8 days after I was born.
Oh, it does actually, yeah.
And 9 months before 8 months? 7.5 months.
Yeah.
8.5 months.
When I popped into the world.
When you popped into the world, squealing. There you go. All right, folks. It all began with the discovery of a body, unfortunately. The body of 35-year-old sex worker Mary Lou Pratt was found laid out, displayed on a street in the southern suburbs of Dallas on December 13th, 1990. She'd first been discovered by children who thought they'd spotted a mannequin. Only when they got closer did they realize it was a human being. Now, Pratt was well known in the streets as both a sex worker and a drug user, with a long list of run-ins and interactions with the law on both counts. Now, she had been killed by a single .44 caliber gunshot wound to the back of her head. The caliber used indicated that the gun was most likely a revolver, so even if Pratt was killed at the scene, there would be no casing left behind. But investigators already knew from the way her nearly naked body had been obviously and deliberately placed in the middle of the street that this had been a dump site and not where the killing had happened. When detectives Westphalen and McNary of the Dallas PD arrived on the scene, locals had attempted to give her back a little dignity in death by placing a white bedsheet over her exposed body.
The children, by the way, that you mentioned, who found the body, they were 14, but they were also drunk on a case of Budweiser and a bottle of Mad Dog. Legends.
Mad Dog? What's Mad Dog, I wonder?
I don't know, I looked it up before. It's just like a bottle of liquor. It's a fortified wine, around 13 to 20% alcohol.
Wow, those kids, pretty cool.
Wild kids, legends.
Those kids are cool. We should hang out with those kids.
We should, man. Yeah, actually, they're probably about a little older than us now, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So the murder seemed like many others, right, that Dallas PD dealt with far too often. Pratt operated in an area called Oak Cliff, which is a part of Dallas known for its quote-unquote nightlife, so to speak. While not the very worst place, Oak Cliff wasn't somewhere where people were shocked to hear a murdered sex worker had been found. Investigators assumed that this was something they'd seen 1,000 times before. An exchange between a sex worker and a client had gone bad and ended with the death of a vulnerable woman. Maybe made more tragic by how familiar it all was. At the time, Dallas had one of the highest murder rates across all of the United States, at close to 2 a day on average. So it all seemed pretty regular until it came to Mary Lou Pratt's autopsy.
Yeah, like this was a time in Dallas's history when the crime rate was at its peak. So about like 1 in every 6 residents, they reported being a victim of a crime.
1 in 6?
1 in 6.
Shit.
Yeah. And in between 1990 and 1991, there were roughly 500 murders each year. Like most major cities across the United States, they were seeing similar statistics. It was likely driven by the violence associated with the crack epidemic at the time.
Wow, that's crazy. That's a wild number.
Yeah.
Medical examiner Dr. Elizabeth Peacock was going through the motions, weighing and measuring, making notes as she went, when she came to something that took her breath away. When Peacock opened one of Pratt's eyelids, she expected to see her own distorted face being reflected back at her in a dilated and fixed pupil. Instead, there was nothing, just a cavity where the eye should have been. Her surprise quickly turned to complete shock when she opened the other eye to find the exact same thing, just a fleshy void where an eye should have been. On deeper examination, Peacock found that not only had Pratt's eyes been removed post-mortem, but that it had been done with some level of surgical skill. Suddenly, Pratt's death seemed a lot less like a street deal gone bad, and much more like someone had been hunting her and had taken themselves a trophy. As far as suspects went, there was no shortage at all. If anything, there was far too many suspects. Every single client Pratt had met with had to be considered, and that number in itself could be into the dozens. With next to nothing to go on, no physical evidence or eyewitnesses, only a few hairs that didn't belong to Pratt, to even begin to be able to narrow down the list would have taken a long time and a lot of manpower, something that unfortunately our society doesn't deem worthy of a single murdered sex worker.
I think once the detectives realised that this wasn't just a sex work deal gone sideways, but a sexually motivated killing, they knew that this was going to be a lot harder to solve. These type of thrill kills where the killer gets off on sexual violence, they're some of the toughest ones to actually solve. First off, these guys, they rarely feel any guilt, so they're less likely to repent or, to tell someone. Also, their twisted urges, they usually run so deep, they keep them completely hidden from anyone that they know. Then on top of that, the murders with sexual mutilation, they're usually stranger on stranger, which makes tracking the killer a lot more difficult. Like when someone kills for money or in a fit of rage or passion, there's usually a reason that you can trace, like a breakup, a grudge, or some death. But when it's just a total stranger, there's no clear motive. So you're basically starting from zero.
Yeah, you have nowhere to begin at all. But that didn't mean the detectives did nothing. Westphalen and McNary contacted the FBI and had them check their extensive databases for any mention of crimes where the victim's eyes had been surgically removed. But they found nothing, no other cases that were similar to this. On the street, local patrol officers, John Matthews and Regina Smith, who knew the area of Oak Cliff and its residents well, had been asking around for any information that might help find Pratt's killer and stop them before they got a chance to strike again. Something the FBI had informed Dallas PD they should expect to happen again very soon. The problem was, if anyone from the Oak Cliff community did come forward, whatever they said was very likely going to be hard to take at face value. Which is exactly what happened. They were like, hey, anybody, any information about a killer or a sketch person in the area, come tell us, come tell the police. Somebody does come forward.
I don't believe you.
Bullshit. Fucking liar. It's like, what the fuck? Why'd you bother asking? Local officers, right, beat cops, Smith and Matthews, were very familiar with sex workers around Oak Cliff, especially those who worked the Star Motel, which is just where Pratt had worked too. One of those workers, a crack cocaine addict named Veronica Rodriguez, told the officers that she had been attacked by a client who had cut her neck. When they asked for more information, she described the man as being a well-built white guy with graying, salt and pepper hair. She then told him she had witnessed Pratt's death and said the man had driven her and Pratt to a field where he pulled a gun after they had rendered their services. She said that Pratt had argued with the man and he had shot her. Now luckily, Veronica Rodriguez had managed to flee and got to a nearby house, where the owner, a truck driver named Axton Schindler, had helped her, kept her safe. The officers knew Rodriguez and knew she had lied to them many times before, so she comes forward with the story, the exact thing they're looking for. They're like,
why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying?
nah. Rodriguez was known for her drug-fueled lies, and it didn't really help her case that the more she told her story, the more it changed. From details about exactly what happened to the perpetrator's race, every recalling brought more changes to her story. The fundamentals of the tale remained the same, however. She was driven to a remote field, attacked, managed to escape, and was eventually rescued by a man when she ran to a nearby house.
There was one detail that she brought up a couple of times. So when she managed to get away from the man, she hid in a drainage ditch, and she was so thin from her crack cocaine addiction that she managed to squeeze herself right into this tiny little drainage pipe, and she would stay there, hidden in this just hidden in the dark, while she could see this man outside searching for her, which must have been terrifying. Eventually, when she thought that it was all clear, she made her way to Schindler's house. But another interesting detail, which unfortunately got brushed off as just another one of her wild stories, was that she said that after she felt safe in Schindler's house, the same man showed up again to the house. But according to her, Schindler actually knew the guy and he protected her, saving her life. But like you mentioned, Rodriguez's head was completely fried from all the drugs, so they didn't look too closely at this lead. Still, that little detail of Schindler knowing the man, that will be an important detail later.
That may come up. Or it may not.
Definitely will.
Let's keep them on their toes, Keith. Okay. Listener, stay on your toes, please. It was 2 months later, on February 10th, 1991, with no progress in Mary Lou Pratt's murder being made, 911 received a call of a second body being found. The call brought police to a street just outside of Dallas city limits. The body of 27-year-old Susan Beth Peterson was found, crudely displayed just like Pratt's had been. She had been shot twice in the head and once in the chest, with the same caliber weapon as Mary Lou Pratt had been shot with. She was almost naked, except for her bra and shirt, which, also like Pratt, had been pulled up to expose her breasts. No witness, no strong physical evidence once again. And then there was the eyes. Once more, the autopsy revealed that Peterson's eyes had been removed in a similar fashion to Pratt's. The location of Peterson's body complicated matters a little, as it technically, the jurisdiction fell within the Dallas County Sheriff's Office and not Dallas Police Department. Fortunately, the pathologist who carried out the autopsy on Susan Beth Peterson told the detective from the sheriff's office, Larry Oliver, about an eerily similar case he had heard that Dallas PD had just a few weeks earlier. So now, Larry Oliver immediately booked an appointment to see Detective John Westphalen, and the men very quickly knew they needed to pool the resources together and, work together. Officers Smith and Matthews had also known Susan Peterson throughout their patrols in Oak Cliff and the Star Motel area, exactly how they knew Veronica Rodriguez and Mary Lou Pratt. Unlike many of the sex workers they knew, Susan Peterson didn't come across as being in need of protection. She was a smart and capable woman, former Navy, with an attitude to match. She had wits too. Susan Peterson wasn't the type to jump into a car and toddle off with any Elwyn who called over. So officers Smith and Matthews figured there was simply no way that Susan would have been brought down like that, not without any kind of fight. That meant only one thing. Susan Peterson knew her killer. Enough so, she was comfortable with them and let her guard down. The killer of Pratt and now Peterson must be a regular John
Yeah.
to the area, as they say.
One of their old tricks. I gotta say, unlike other cases that we've done, the police have been quite competent so far. No, I mean, the bar is pretty low. But, from what I read, the two officers, Smith and Matthews, they genuinely seemed to care about the safety of the sex workers on their beat. And they actually ended up building quite a rapport with some of the women, which led them to being comfortable enough to share information with them that they had. Now, unfortunately, they just ignored that information. But that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But the detectives on the case, they were also on the ball. They contacted the FBI straight away after the first murder, suspecting that, this is different. Let's see, possibly a serial killer. If not, let's get it on their radar. And then there's the cooperation between the Dallas County Sheriff's Office and Dallas PD. It's the bare minimum what they should be doing, but we don't see it a lot in these cases.
Yeah, more often than not, it's the police didn't talk to each other and a serial killer got away yet again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Although then again, you said there was 500 plus murders per year in Dallas, so they have a lot of practice investigating. Let's give the cops that, you know.
Okay, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah. It's not like in, what was it, the Texarkana Killer, where they're like, shit, I don't know what to do, partner. You know? Less than a month later, on March 17th, Patrick's Day, 1991, 41-year-old sex worker Shirley Williams had spent the evening hanging out, doing drugs with friends, when she left to return home to her daughter. Only she never made it home. Instead, her badly beaten and naked body was found, left lying in the street close to a school. Shirley Williams had been shot twice in the head, and once again, her eyes had been removed. This time, though, something had changed. The blade work was more frenzied and less exact. In addition to the missing eyes, there were additional cuts to Williams's face, including a deep cut to an inch to the side of either eye. And in those cuts, the pathologist found something interesting. The tip of an X-Acto style blade that had broken off when the instrument had hit the top of the victim's cheekbone. That wasn't the only change. Shirley Williams was also black. The previous two victims, Peterson and Pratt, had both been white. And as far as serial killers and repeat killers go, it's pretty unusual. Serial killers will normally not cross racial lines, right? White killers tend to target white people, black killers tend to target black people. So when Williams' death became public knowledge, the sex workers in the area started to really begin to shit themselves at a black sex worker is being killed. Previously, it'd only been the white chicks had been killed, and the black sex workers, they were like, oh, wait, he's not going to come after me.
Yeah, well, and they were actually because the white sex workers, when this was all happening, the ones who could afford not to, they stayed off the streets.
Yeah.
And then the black sex workers excellent,
more business for me.
Yeah. And they were got real armchair detectives. They're well, he only seems to attack every 2 months, so I've got another month before something happens. Yeah. That wasn't the case.
So basically now everyone was vulnerable. The once busy Star Motel and the wider Oak Cliff area suddenly fell eerily quiet. The only ones who remained were those who couldn't afford to stop working or to travel to somewhere slightly safer.
Dallas PD, they also ordered extra patrols around the star, along with a no-tolerance crackdown on sex workers. So if any of the women were seen to be working, they went to jail and no tickets were to be issued, just straight to jail.
Mm-hmm.
The way they saw it was every time officers locked up one of them, they had one less potential victim to worry about.
Oh, wow. I'm not
It's
sure.
in their best interest, but
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with that.
they're still in
actually.
jail, like.
Yeah, exactly. Officers Matthews and Smith continued to work the area, and eventually they came across one of those who remained in Oak Cliff, 17-year veteran of the streets, Brenda White. Brenda told the officers a familiar story from a few nights prior, a story in which she had a run-in with a white guy who tried to attack her. Brenda had gotten into the car to begin negotiations when the man suggested taking her to a place he knew, but Brenda refused and told the man it was her policy to go to a motel she knew, especially if the client, was a brand new client and she didn't know them at all. She wasn't just, was trying to be safe about the whole thing. When the man became aggressive, even screaming that he was going to kill her, Brenda, fair play to her, she grabbed her mace and sprayed the man in the face before making a hasty getaway. The whole thing had shook her up, but sadly that wasn't unusual in her line of work. What jumped out at the officers was that this story was sorta similar to what one Veronica Rodriguez had told them a couple of months earlier. In both instances, the man was a well-built white guy with salt and pepper hair. Officers Smith and Matthews decided to dig a little further into the stories and decided to check out that Axton Schindler fella, the man who Rodriguez had claimed, he had saved her from her attacker. As you get him to point her out so astutely mentioned, Keith, maybe he knew or seemed to know the man who was chasing Veronica Rodriguez and who Veronica Rodriguez said had murdered the very first victim, Pratt, in front of her.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe she's not full of shit.
Yeah, if only they'd paid attention. Schindler's address on his driver's license didn't match where he was living. His address was listed at 1035 El Dorado. So Smith made a note of it and looked it up. And instead of Schindler's name at that address, she found it was owned by a Charles and Fred Albright. By complete chance, as Smith was later passing by a detective's desk, she overheard an officer also say 1035 El Dorado and the name Albright in passing. What a coincidence. The name's coming up again. So she was a little taken back and asked why he had those details. Well, hey, I also, 1035 El Dorado and the name Albright has also come up for me.
Yeah.
Being sort of linked to this case. This other detective told her he was talking to an informant who thought she might know who the killer they were looking for was. His name was Charles Albright, and he lives at 1035 El Dorado. That little detail of the address on the license was what had earlier caused Smith and Matthews to question the truth behind Rodriguez's statements to them, because the geography didn't match. Now, it suddenly did. Because, Schindler had this listed, but he wasn't the owner.
Yes.
He was renting.
Yes.
That was the key.
He was renting from Charles.
From Charles Albright.
Or I think it was under Fred's name. But yeah.
Oh yeah, it was under Fred's name because that was Charles' father.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that was kind of like how it started linking together, how they started linking like where Rodriguez had ran to, why his address didn't match, and then linked it to Albright because he actually technically owned the house.
Yeah, because I can kind of see how initially the detectives or the police officers might have thought that the story was like bullshit. Like Rodriguez was saying, I was taken by a man I didn't know to a place that I didn't know, and then I ran away, and then I just happened to stumble across a house that I didn't know, but the man I knew, and then the man that I knew the man that I didn't know, and they're like, okay, shut up. What dog?
Yeah, it's like when you're a child telling a story.
Yeah.
So the investigation revealed that Fred Albright was the listed owner of the properties close to where both Pratt and Peterson had been found. Then detectives looked into him and his son Charles too. While Fred, it turned out, was dead by this point, his son Charles was very much alive. According to the informant, not only were they a friend of Mary Lou Pratt, but they'd had a relationship with 57-year-old Charles Albright in the past, and this Charles Albright, he had a fetish around the eyes. More than that, he was obsessed with X-Acto blades too. You can see how it could happen. Charles Albright takes Veronica Rodriguez and Mary Lou Pratt out to a place he knows because it's close to where he lives. Veronica Rodriguez just happens to get away and runs to the house he lives in and bumps into his tenant basically, and just happens to save her life.
Yeah. And then I guess like Charles ran the house like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's my house. Don't go in there. Man, it must suck if you're a serial killer and the victim runs into your house. You're like, God damn it.
So I had to look up what an eyeball fetish was. So apparently it's called oculolinctus, which is also known as worming or eyeball licking.
Oh.
So it refers to the practice of licking eyeballs for erotic gratification.
That's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, no, I don't want to kink shame, but
Yeah, no,
Good grief.
That's what I say. Is like, yeah, I don't want to king shame, but no, we need to bring back king shaming. I'm going to stand by this because some of this shit, Shane, seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. What do you think an eyeball tastes like? Because eyeballs like wet, right? It probably just tastes like tears, like salty.
Oh, it could be salty, like a pretzel. I'll give it a
Keith,
go.
you are a disgusting man.
Come here to me. Give me an eyeball.
All right, let's move on. Who was Charles Albright? Well, Charles Frederick Albright was born August 10th, 1993.
Correction, 1933.
When he immediately became a ward of the state and spent his very first days in the world in an orphanage in Amarillo, Texas. He was quickly adopted at just 3 weeks old by Dell and Fred Albright. Now, Charles began displaying some very worrying behavior from an early age, but the real trouble came when Charles hit puberty. He had a strange upbringing, with his mother being especially protective of her only child. Dell went to extraordinary lengths to give Charles the start she thought he needed in life. She even kept goats in the backyard just to be able to give young Charles goat's milk rather than the usual store-bought shite off the shelf. His adoptive mother would change Charles's clothes 3 times a day in an effort to keep him clean and avoid getting him ill, which I imagine will just do it worse because you need to be around bacteria to build up a good immune system.
She did weird things. Like, she also occasionally put him in a little girl's dress and gave him a doll to hold.
This is like the definition of a serial killer is
I know, yeah.
child mother.
Exactly, yeah. Like, maybe she was just ahead of the time, like, breaking the social norms. But she was really afraid that he might touch dog poo and get polio from that. So she took him to Parkland Hospital to see polio patients locked in these huge iron lungs, saying, you can spend the rest of your life here if you touch dog poo, which is like extremely bizarre behavior. But she definitely used like fear-based discipline on him, which is kind of funny because I feel like at one point she definitely must have said, "Damn it, Charlie, you won't be happy till someone loses an eye." And he was like,
I feel like she might have licked his eyes. She was definitely being weird with him.
She was strange. Yeah, she did. She had a lot of weird behavior.
Yeah. As a school teacher, Dell also expected a lot from Charles academically and pushed him to skip multiple grades, which led to him graduating from high school at 15 and enrolling at North Texas University. She also drove Charles to practice as many extracurricular activities as possible. Things like making him practice the piano before going to school for up to 30 minutes at a time. Now, Dell may have loved her little old boy, her little angel, a little too much. But she was also not sparing with the rod when she thought it was needed. In addition to a variety of creative punishments when she ruled Charles to have misbehaved or disobeyed her, Dell would literally tie her son to his bed until she felt he had learned his lesson. So all of this did little to quell Charles's pathological tendencies. So even though on the surface he appeared to be doing well, when he graduated early and began college at 15, I feel like that's not doing well. You should not be going to college when you're 15 years old.
No.
It wasn't long before he was out of the classroom and into a jail cell when he was arrested and charged with theft after being caught with a bunch of stolen cash, about $380. He also had a stolen rifle and 2 handguns. Also in that same year, 1948, Charles also found out he contracted pubic lice, which revealed his earlier interaction with a sex worker. So maybe hatred of sex workers starting to bubble up there too.
Yeah, I think Charles, his mother, she actually warned him about crabs. She had this really weird paranoia about toilet seats, telling Charlie to never sit on them because he might catch body lice or crabs. So apparently she knew that they could live on toilet seats because her own husband, Fred, had once brought them home to her after sitting on a public toilet seat. Which, I mean, it kind of sounds like Fred might have been pulling his pants down on more than just toilet seats.
Ooh,
you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I do. Dirty Fred. With a long criminal background going back years already, including assault in 1946 when he was only 13 years old, followed by a whole heap of thefts, Charles was given a year in jail. A sentence that his mother actually pleaded with the judge for her to serve in place of her son. Obviously, the judge says no, but how embarrassing is that? Yeah. He was released a year later, still only 16. Now, Charles had every opportunity to turn things around and start over. When Charles was old enough to begin going on dates, by the way, his mother would often act as chaperone and would even tell the girl's parents that her son would be on his best behavior. honestly, with how overbearing she was, it's kind of like not surprising he would act out and begin breaking the law. Breaking the law. You know?
Yeah.
Because you would just be like, you just go insane with a mother like that.
Oh,
Who's
100%.
always around you.
Yeah, it's completely overbearing.
Yeah.
She was an oddball. I remember there was one when she was when she had the talk with her son. She did tell him to respect women, especially when it came to sex. But she lectured him about how the way that her father acted greedy with sex. She explained to her son that whenever Fred saw her in the bedroom in just her bra and panties, that he tried to grab her. She was going to have none of that, and she was going to make sure that Charlie never tried anything like that with his girlfriends. What she's saying is the right thing. It's just a very odd way of saying it and going away and going about it.
Yeah, very much so. So, instead, after being released from that 1 year in jail, he basically went right back inside after being arrested for theft and receiving stolen goods once again. That got him 2 years, but he would only serve 6 months of it before being released once more. Charles then enrolled at Arkansas State Teachers College. He would eventually become a teacher, but this run at education ended early. Charles was apparently not very liked at all, and had a reputation for lying for basically no reason. He was known to, brag about his many sexual adventures, and would pretty much just make up constant lies about how fucking shit hot he was. While at college, he was also thought to have been responsible for breaking into the girls' dorm and stealing private photographs.
Another tick on the serial killer list there.
Yeah. Though he did well in some classes, Charles had a habit of disregarding classes he had no personal interest in, and so began failing overall. Suddenly, though, Charles's grades began to improve. Something his teachers and peers found very odd, given he hadn't been paying any more attention in their classes, and even stranger still, he seemed to be getting good grades in the classes they knew he had failed. Well, old Charlie had a little trick up his sleeve. He had begun dating a girl named Betty Nestor, who helped out with the school's admin, and he had her steal him an office key so he could basically let himself into the back office of the university, or the college, and just get the Tipex out, and the fucking eraser, and just change, it was altering, it basically literally just altering his grades. He managed to avoid expulsion at that time, but not forever. Actually, it was right before he was about to graduate that he was caught with stolen goods once again and finally got the boot. He reasoned that a diploma was just a piece of paper. And so he was like, well, I got a piece of paper right here. He basically just made himself one with crayons. He's like, listen, here's my degree. Around 1968, when he was 34 years old, he not only faked himself a bachelor's degree, he also printed himself a master's degree too.
Well, why not?
Wow. Why did he balls in, balls out,
That's
I suppose.
Keep
go
going.
hard to go home. Yeah, why not? It was also during his college years that Charles, after a bad breakup, had cut out the eyes of a photograph of his ex that he kept on his wall and pasted them onto a picture of another girl.
He even pulled out that little stunt.
Which is a very serial killer move.
He pulled that stunt on one of his friends as well as a prank. So he cut the eyes out of photos from this guy's ex-girlfriend and glued them all around his dorm room. So no matter where he looked, his ex was always watching him. He even glued his ex's eyes on photos of pictures of his new girlfriend, which is so weird. He was like, it's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank.
That's so disturbing.
It's so weird. Yeah,
it truly is. Man, it's serial killers like this who are so influential with how we view serial. You see movies and shit like that. It's like, oh wow, that's.
When you're reading, it's like, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
Put him in jail.
So Charles, though, he did have some level of charm and genuine success. He did go on to marry his college sweetheart, Betty Nestor, his fucking partner in crime, helping him alter his grades. He married her when he was only 20. The two got married a couple of days before Christmas, 1954, and eventually had a daughter, Charles's only child. As Charles bounced from job to job, which I don't understand, how did he bounce around? He had a master's degree. But he did bounce around. He worked as a bullfighter, a hairdresser, which is
those well-known occupations you need master degrees for.
Bit of a yin-yang thing over here. A carpenter, an illustrator, and a designer at an aerospace company.
It's finally using that degree, huh?
Yeah. I feel like that's the one industry where you really do want to double check they have their proper degrees.
But it's also like, I assume the degree, that would help you get in the door, but then what?
Like engineering and aerospace, you do need to know your shit. You can't just kind of bullshit your way through how planes fucking work. You either know it or you don't.
How's it fly? God, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So while he was doing all these different jobs, it was his wife Betty who kept them ticking over by basically working constantly. In 1970, aged 36, Charles's attempt to forge his qualifications was uncovered. I mean, he didn't exactly put them to good use. A hairdresser, a bullfighter, a carpenter. Like, he didn't need
you could have got them anyway.
Yeah, you didn't need a master's degree for those jobs. But he got a 3 years probation for that little stunt. Charles did have a couple more run-ins in those years when he was caught forging checks in 1971, something he did from time to time when money was tight. Charles also got lucky though and only ever had to pay back fines and probations for these little infractions. He never did any serious jail time. In the end, his wife got fed up with the instability in their lives, and the two finally separated in 1975 when he was 41 years of age. In April 1979, 46-year-old Charles broke a 4-year streak when he was caught with stolen perfume and received yet another year of probation. That ultimately landed him back in jail when he was caught with a stolen miter saw while still serving that probation. But he served out the rest of his probation period and was released, only for his adoptive mother, good old Dell, to pass away at the year 1980. This spurred Charles into tracking down his birth mother. Now, the origins of Charlie's obsession with both sex workers and eyeballs could also have originated in his unusual childhood. As soon as Charles got his first gun as a child, he would delight in shooting small game like rabbits and squirrels, another notch on a serial killer, killing small animals. Something Dell, by the way, she encouraged this, actively encouraged it, and even guided him to get involved with taxidermy. Now, Charlie grew up knowing absolutely nothing about his biological parents and believed that his birth mother had been a sex worker. Adolescence also brought Charles an almost obsessive interest in taxidermy, something Dell was happy to encourage, seeing it as a possible gateway into a future medical career. What do I say? He's stuffing a fucking squirrel. He can be a doctor, yes, yeah. But the thing was, the eyeball fetish had its roots in Charles's taxidermy hobby. Despite his mother's constant doting, the family were far from well off and Dell was as tight as they come, so to speak. That meant when it came to finishing his taxidermy projects, rather than, shell out the expensive glass eyes or beads that they traditionally use, Charles had to basically use regular sewing buttons for his taxidermies. He had to Coraline. If anybody's ever seen Coraline, it's a good movie. Yeah. He had to which is creepy as all shit.
That's so creepy.
That's what the Nightmare family used. Coraline.
Yeah. That's weird. It's better than googly eyes though, I guess. Also, as you mentioned, his mother was quite frugal and she'd never buy the glass eyes for her son. So Charles, what he used to do was he used to get the bus into town to this taxidermy supply shop and he'd run his hands through these boxes of marbly glass eyes, but he'd never be able to buy them. Now, I'm no psychologist, but I feel that's an important element in his little story.
Rubbing the eyes.
Also, the way that they used to get some of the animals to practice was wild. So usually Charles, he'd shoot birds or squirrels, as he said, but that made a complete mess and it wasn't exactly ideal for taxidermy. So he found out that one of his neighbours kept pigeons and offered to clean their cages every week. And the neighbour, once he heard that Charlie's hobby was taxidermy, he actually donated a pigeon to him. Now, Charles, he took the pigeon home and his mom killed it by suffocating it with a rag soaked in chloroform.
Damn.
Then they both proceeded to skin it together. She was basically raising him to be a serial killer at this point.
Yeah. Now that is
weird.
Yeah. In 1981, Charles's criminal life took a dark, dark turn when he was arrested after being accused of molesting a 9-year-old girl. Something he ended up entering a guilty plea, though he later went back on claiming he'd only done so because he couldn't afford the expense of defending himself and the hassle involved. But you're still pleading guilty to molesting. I mean, I think if I was being accused of molesting a girl, and I was innocent, I would be like, I don't care. I will spend billions to fight this. But he was like, nah, I'll plead guilty. And then later on, I didn't actually do it.
He admitted, he said he felt that the girl had been abused by someone else. And he said for some reason, that which he would never understand, her parents decided to pin the assault on him. He said that he pled guilty to spare the church the embarrassment of a scandal, which is a wild statement.
Yeah, of course. The church, totally unused, never has any scandals at all. So,
That's their whole shtick.
Yeah, exactly. They love it. They love scandals. They don't even like molesting kids. They just want the scandal. Once more, though, Charles got very lucky and was only given probation. In 1984, Charles, now aged 51, dated a woman named Mary White, who would later testify against him and claim she knew he killed Mary Lou Pratt. Charles met another woman named Dixie Austin in 1985, and the pair would eventually become common law man and wife. The couple actually had a similar dynamic to the one Charles had with his first wife, Betty. While Dixie would go to work every day and pay the bills, Charlie would stay at home and do absolutely fucking nothing. At least nothing he would tell anyone about. Despite being happy for Dixie to pay the lion's share of the couple's outgoings, Charles had actually inherited quite a lot of money, about 100 grand, from his father, Fred, when he died in 86. So when Dixie went to work, Charles went to see sex workers. And despite already being in a relationship with Dixie, Charles spent weeks in 1990 trying to pursue a romantic relationship with another woman named Glenda Durham. When Durham found out he was already seeing and living with someone else, she ended things, much to Charles's annoyance. It was around this time that many who knew Charles would later testify his behavior started to become strange in 1990. Not harmful, but odd things, like mowing the lawn in his underwear. Just kooky things like this, you know. In a more worrying change, though, he had been also known to doodle violent images, like dead women.
Yeah, that's a red flag.
Charles had almost the exact background, both personal and criminal, that detectives would expect of a potential serial killer. As soon as Smith and Matthews, they saw an old mugshot of Charles, they knew he was the man they'd been looking for. Everything about him fit what Veronica Rodriguez had described about the man who had attacked her and killed her friend in front of her. Now, with Brenda White also saying a similar story, it was clear she'd been telling the truth all along. Officers Smith and Matthews now had enough to take their suspicions up the ladder to Detective Westphalen's office. Westphal thought it sounded like a good lead, but he was a much more experienced investigator than Officers Smith and Matthews, and knew they needed to check out Brenda White's corroborating story first. When Brenda was shown 6 photos of a graying, well-built, middle-aged man, she picked out Charles Albright's photo right away. When Veronica Rodriguez was asked to do the very same, Officers Smith and Matthews noted that while she refused to pick out any person, she had a visceral reaction to seeing Charles Albright's image. One out of the two just wasn't going to be enough, though, for murder charges. It was enough to bring an assault charge, though, and that meant the investigators could more easily obtain a search warrant, ostensibly looking for evidence related to the assault. But should they happen to find evidence linking him to a murder, well, it would still have been found legally and would be still admissible in court.
Westphalen did meet with Rodriguez after Smith and Matthews and was ultimately able to persuade her to look at the photos again. This time she chose the picture of Albright immediately. This would come back to bite Westphalen and the investigation in the arse when Rodriguez did a 180 and claimed that she didn't have a clue who Albright was and never met him. She even went so far as to claim that Westphalen had forced her to ID Albright in the photo lineup.
Yeah. So now it kind of makes complete sense why when Veronica Rodriguez first came up with the story, they didn't believe her.
Yeah, right.
Because she pulls this kind of shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, that's why they thought she was full of shite.
Yeah, that's why we didn't listen to her.
Yeah. So still, authorities had enough to check out Charles Albright's home address. And on March 22nd, 1991, detectives finally met Charles Albright when they arrested him at 1035 El Dorado, arresting him for the assault charge, of course. When it came time to interview him, Charles insisted he had never heard of the murders or the victims and that he had never ever been with a prostitute. Ever? What's a prostitute? What's a sex worker? Sure, how would I know these things?
I'm so innocent.
Unfortunately for Albright, this lie was the point that the skeptics among the investigators, who were still holding out that, maybe it's not him, well, they finally joined the rest of his colleagues when he's clearly lying about something. They knew he was, it's the most obvious lie ever. The interview lasted 7 hours, but detectives couldn't break Charles Albright. Meanwhile, the search was undergoing at 1035 El Dorado. The search started out very promising when detectives found a bunch of ex-acto brand blades, several true crime books, and a copy of Grey's Anatomy, the book from 1958, not a DVD box set. Right. My friends out there. By the way, point again, Grey's Anatomy is a book from the 1850s. It was like one of the first anatomy books.
Oh, the title.
And a title. See? Not copyrighted.
Yeah. It's all, we're looping back.
Hey,
it all ties
bring it
in.
all back, yeah.
We know what we're doing.
Yeah, that was totally an issue. So when searchers came across, though, a hidden cache of guns in his house, they all began to think it was only a matter of minutes before they found something solid to link Albright to the crimes they were investigating. They found a bunch of guns and all this other creepy shit. There must be something here. Ooh, a trophy. A jar of pickled eyeballs, perhaps.
Ooh.
He'd stolen 6 eyeballs that they knew of.
That'd be a smoking gun, all right.
Yeah, it would be. But the key discovery never came. As wildly suspicious as the finds were, big bag of guns, ex-Acto brand blades, a copy of an anatomy book, none actually connected Albright to the eyeball murders. And even witnesses were kind of shaky at best. Even though it seemed pretty obvious he must he's their guy, they didn't have anything
substantial to pin him on him.
That's exactly it.
Pin it on him. Yeah.
Everything they found had another very believable explanation for being in his house. The case started falling apart, with Veronica Rodriguez going back on her ID of Charles Albright. Axton Schindler was claiming he had never saved anyone, never saved Rodriguez from anybody, no sex worker randomized being chased at all, never happened. Albright's wife, Dixie, was alibying her hubby out of suspect number 1 position. She claimed she had been with him at the time of the murders. It seemed like they were reaching into dead ends everywhere. The investigation went from seeming to have been cracked wide open to absolutely shut down in a couple of hours. Albright began to look far less likely to have been the man behind the spree of murders and eyeball thefts, and more like just some creepy guy who lied about visiting sex workers. When his neighbors found out Charles had been arrested and what he'd been arrested for, assaulting a sex worker, all of them either laughed it off as absurd or were flat out outraged that anyone could accuse such a lovely, trustworthy, upstanding man of heinous crimes. He's not that type of guy at all, not in a million years.
Charles, he had long buried his criminal past under a deep pile of respectability. So to those around him, even closest to him, Charles Albright was a happily married former teacher at a local high school with a good old-fashioned family man. He was the kind of guy that people would ask, to watch their kids if they got called away in an emergency. Someone they saw every day and never crossed word with. There was no way that he could be the vicious mad killer that the police were hunting. It couldn't be. Not our Charlie.
Not Charlie. The investigation, however, continued in the background. When Dallas PD got a tip from another sex worker in Oak Cliff named Tina Conlon, they first thought it would turn out like all the others. After all, the authorities had been burned by Veronica Rodriguez's sudden recanting. But Tina's story had too much potential to not be checked out. So Tina Conlon told detectives that she had been friends with victim Shirley Williams and had been out with Shirley that night, but the two split up when it started raining. Tina recalled Shirley had been wearing a bright yellow raincoat and had gotten into a white pickup truck as Tina was walking away, and police had found a stolen Chevy pickup truck at Charles Albright's house. Better yet, Tina Conlon knew Charles Albright. In fact, she claimed he was a regular customer, but only in the daytime, except for the day Shirley Williams had been killed. Tina told police that Charles would always take her to the same place, a field on the edge of town. Tina escorted officers Smith and Matthews to the place in question, where they realized they very likely just discovered the murder scene. Nearby was a blanket, an empty condom wrapper, and Shirley Williams's badly blood-stained, distinctive yellow raincoat. Shortly after the search, forensics came back on several hair samples taken from the Albright residence. The hairs had been tested against samples taken from the various dump sites and the newly discovered Williams murder scene. When one came back as a probable match, the investigators' interest in Charles Albright was suddenly reignited. Several hairs taken from Charles's car turned out to be quite unusual. They weren't human. They were from a squirrel's tail. So given Charles's predilection for taxidermy, it wasn't too hard to explain why they were in his car. What was harder to explain was why similar hair was found on Shirley Williams's raincoat, unless A, the squirrel did it, or B, Charles did it and he's bringing squirrel hairs around with him. It's kind of funny that, from a forensic point of view, that it's not his own hair. That's giving it away. It's his hobby's hair. Is giving it away.
Sealed his face. It's quite poetic, actually.
Yeah.
The detectives, they interviewed a lot of local sex workers from Oak Cliff, and many of them they knew and had provided services for Charles in the past. And now, while all of them said that he was polite and softly spoken to them, the perfect gentleman, outside of their exchange of services at least, many of them said that he could be violent.
And some reported being tied up. Others claimed he liked to insult them and called them derogatory names during sex acts and could become rough. When put on a shelf with all the other evidence pointing at Charles Albright as the eyeball killer, however, it suddenly became a whole lot more important. Charles Albright was indicted in Williams's murder April 8, 1991. Soon after, he was indicted on a further 3 murder charges. So that makes 4 total. The first victim, Mary Lou Pratt. The second victim, Susan Peterson. The third victim, Shirley Williams. And a fourth victim we have not mentioned yet. The fourth was 30-year-old Rhonda Bowie. Bowie, another Dallas area working girl, was found murdered in 1988, chronologically making her the first victim. She had been stabbed to death in a frenzied and brutal attack. She'd sustained more than 20 deep wounds. She was missing one key thing though, or rather, she wasn't missing anything. Rhonda's eyes still right in her head where they should be. So why then was she considered a victim of Charles Albright? She didn't have, I mean, he's called the eyeball killer for a reason.
That's the whole thing.
Well, in addition to her body being discovered in a similar place to the 3 eyeball victims, the same mysterious hairs that were found on both Williams and in Albright's car were discovered on Rhonda's body. I doubt the prosecutors ever expected to get a conviction in Rhonda's case, except for one tricky dicky taxidermied squirrel. Gave the game away.
The squirrel again. Oh my god.
Fucking squirrels at it.
I personally feel that there was definitely more victims.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like if Mary Lou Pratt was his first murder, like we have to remember that Veronica Rodriguez was also there. She just got away. And like that's quite an escalation to try to kill 2 people at once. Like usually there is more of a build-up with serial killers until they get to a point where they feel that they can control the situation to murder more than one person at a time. So it'd be really weird for them to start killing and be like, I'm going to start with 2.
Well, he would have started with Rhonda. She was first. That was in 1988.
No, yeah. So but that's where they're saying they're not sure.
Oh,
like,
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel definitely Rhonda.
Oh, yeah.
Possibly more.
Oh, well, I think for sure.
Yeah,
Especially because that would be in like a 2-year gap. When like then the next 3 victims were all like in a like
2 months,
2-month period or whatever. For sure. Yeah. So the state of Texas versus Charles Albright was a real nail-biter for the prosecution. There was a mountain of circumstantial evidence in the state's favor, but it was all, well, exactly that, circumstantial. The witnesses the prosecution had were either hard to take at their word, or they were indirect witnesses, meaning they hadn't seen the act itself, but other suspicious behavior that could implicate the perpetrator. Going on trial with that kind of evidence was a real risk. If Albright were to be found not guilty, he could walk right out of the courtroom and tell everyone how much he'd enjoyed murdering those women, and it wouldn't matter, nobody could touch them. So without the smoking gun, or half a dozen eyeballs in Albright's case, a conviction was far from certain. Now, Charles Albright's defense were also very well aware of the precarious nature of the prosecution's case too, and were happy to point out just how circumstantial it all was, being careful to offer alternate explanations for everything the search warrant had turned up, and attacking the character of each of the testifying witnesses. In addition to these squirrel hairs, the prosecution also presented other fiber evidence, including several samples taken from the Albright's vacuum cleaner. Though the prosecution and defense both had their own experts who disagreed over whether or not the fibers actually implicated Albright. Other physical evidence included the discovery of aluminium bullets in Albright's possession that matched, the bullets used in the murders. Condoms of the same brand and wrapper were found at the Williams murder scene, and Charles Albright's wife, Dixie, she admitted the couple never used condoms, so she didn't know why he had them. One of the prosecution's main targets was Albright's honesty, basically because they knew he was a liar. Not only had he claimed to have never used sex workers, which was easily refuted, but basically he just kept lying about everything. His history, everything. Yeah. Something else that turned out to be far more important than anyone expected was the discovery of dozens of receipts from a local gas station for the purchase of gasoline. When they were found, they seemed like insignificant, but Charles later claimed he rarely drove his car, other than to collect newspaper. So many gas station receipts proved, well, you obviously drive your car a shitload. Yeah. Maybe to the area where you might frequent sex workers.
God, he was just getting him on a bunch of his own lies.
Yeah. Like, why would you even keep receipts? It's like, some of this is like dumb shit.
Tax.
Yeah.
Maybe I can claim these back.
The defense presented several witnesses that testified Albright had been in New Mexico for a softball game at the time of the 1988 murder, and Dixie had insisted he had been with her at the time of another. In the end, prosecutors were only able to pursue the Shirley Williams murder charge. Hers was the case that stood the most chance of getting a conviction. The jury finally retired to consider their verdict December 17th, 1991, with neither side being confident of the outcome. It wasn't until the verdict was read in Shirley Williams' case that the prosecution and victims' families could finally let out a breath. Guilty! Unlike the cases of Bowie, Pratt, and Peterson, The difference seemed to be, well, I mean, it's the case that had the most behind it. It had an actual murder scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Charles Albright was sentenced to a minimum of 5 years to a maximum of life in prison.
Jeez, that's a difference.
Yeah. Small, yeah. Well, he definitely got life because he is fucking dead.
Good.
And he is burning in hell right now. He died in 2020, still in prison, never set foot out a day in his life, still maintaining his innocence. Thing was, he only ever got done for one of the darn things.
Yeah.
Question you're all asking, what did he do with the eyeballs? The eyeball killer?
No one knows.
Shrug. We don't know, folks. We don't know what he did with the eyeballs.
I'm going to say he ate them.
You think he ate
I have
them?
no proof. I believe you said they taste like pretzels.
I believe you said that, Keith. But yeah,
That's
sure.
not how I remember. Play the tape back.
Yeah, so there you go. That is the case of Charles Albright, the eyeball killer. The thing about Charles Albright is, I definitely think, we're me and Keith are both sitting back in our chairs. And just, shoot from the hip, us, me and Keith, we're real ones. We tell it how it is. But no, I definitely think... No, it's not. We'll get you a proper chair someday,
Okay.
Keith. Yeah, Keith has to sit on a child's stool.
Where a block.
But no, he definitely killed like way more people.
Oh,
and I
100%,
definitely think it's like much darker than we will ever know.
Do you know, it's mad. It's actually very similar to another case that we done. Tony Costa, the Cape Cod
the Cape
vampire.
Cod vampire. That old fella. Yeah, that was a while ago we covered that one.
There's a lot of similarities between the two. So both had very overprotective and demanding mothers. Both acted out with petty crimes as teenagers and had behavioral problems. They both had a fascination with taxidermy. And both progressed from, relatively petty crimes to deviant fantasies to gruesome and sadistic murders. But, I guess the only, one of the main big differences, Albright, he had a fascination with eyes, while Costa, he was more interested in the internal organs. But, I guess, the main takeaway is keep an eye out for kids who have an obsession with taxidermy.
Yeah.
They're little weirdos.
Yeah, exactly. Just stay away from them. Or just lock them up. Just throw them in jail already.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
it's probably the easiest thing.
Cut
to
out
do.
the middleman of life. Just put them in
Exactly.
there.
Yeah. No judge, no jury. Straight to the prison. All right, folks. Thank you so much for listening to this whole episode of the That Chapter podcast or the Lord of the Rings podcast. Which, maybe we'll change the name. We haven't quite decided.
Lord of the Rings, formerly known as That Chapter Podcast.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks so much for listening. Until the next whole episode of the Potty P.
Oh, see ya.
Oh, sacre bleu.
Sacre bleu.
Salut. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
C'est ce qui doit dire. All right. Thanks, guys.